Welcome back to Education Insights, everyone. I am your host, Sochata, and today we are stepping into a topic that is close to my heart, and honestly, to the heart of our nation's future. We are talking about the influence of policy on early childhood education. This is episode 65, and I am joined in the studio by someone who has spent decades advocating for the smallest among us, Mr. Sarojun.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Sochata. It is truly a pleasure to be here. Whenever we talk about policy, people tend to think of dry documents and dusty shelves, but in the realm of early childhood, policy is actually a living, breathing thing that decides whether a child gets a fair start in life.
That is a powerful way to put it. A living, breathing thing. You know, when we look at the data, it's clear that the first 5 years of a child's life are the most critical for brain development. Mr. Sarojun, when you look at our current policy landscape, do you feel a sense of urgency or a sense of progress?
It is a bit of both, if I am being honest. We have seen incredible progress with the national policy on early childhood care and development. We finally have a roadmap. But the urgency comes from the realization that every day we wait to fully implement these changes, another group of children misses that window of opportunity. It's a race against time, really.
I can hear the weight of that responsibility in your voice. Let's break it down for our listeners who might not be familiar with the jargon. When we talk about policy influencing the classroom, what does that actually look like for a 4-year-old in a rural province versus a city center?
It looks like the difference between a child sitting in a crowded room with one overwhelmed teacher and a child sitting in a vibrant environment where the teacher has been trained specifically in play-based learning. Policy dictates the teacher-to-student ratio. It dictates the budget for learning materials. Without a strong policy, education becomes a luxury, not a right.
And that is the injustice we are trying to solve. I remember visiting a community preschool last month, and the teacher told me that before the new funding policy kicked in, she was buying crayons with her own meager salary. It broke my heart to see her struggle, but her dedication was so inspiring.
That is a story I hear far too often. These teachers are the backbone of our system, yet for a long time, the policy didn't recognize them as professionals. One of the biggest shifts we are seeing now is the push for standardized teacher training and better pay. When the government recognizes a preschool teacher as an equal to a high school teacher, it changes the entire dignity of the profession.
Do you think that shift in dignity actually affects how the children learn? Does the policy change the atmosphere of the classroom?
Absolutely. When a teacher feels supported and valued by the state, that energy flows directly to the kids. They aren't just babysitting anymore. They are educating. They are using specific frameworks to encourage curiosity. A policy that provides a curriculum based on child psychology turns a playgroup into a laboratory of discovery.
I love that image. But let's talk about the obstacles. We know that creating a policy is one thing, but enforcing it across diverse regions is another. What keeps you up at night when it comes to the implementation gap?
What keeps me up is the equity gap. We have these beautiful policies on paper, but if the funding doesn't reach the most remote villages, then the policy is just a promise unkept. We see a lot of leakage or simply a lack of infrastructure. You can't implement an early childhood policy if there isn't a physical building for the kids to meet in.
Exactly. And it's not just buildings. It's health and nutrition, too. I was reading a policy brief recently that suggested integrating school feeding programs into early childhood education. That seems like a game changer for families living in poverty.
It is a total game changer. You cannot teach a hungry child. Policy that links education with nutrition recognizes the whole child. This is where our policymaking is getting smarter. We're starting to see interministerial cooperation. The Ministry of Education is talking to the Ministry of Health. That synergy is where the magic happens.
It sounds like we are finally moving away from silos. But let's talk about the parents. Sometimes policies are designed by experts in offices, but they don't resonate with the parents on the ground. How can policy encourage parents to value early education, especially if they didn't have it themselves?
That is the million-dollar question. Policy must include community outreach. We need to fund local leaders to go door to door and explain that preschool isn't just about playing with blocks. It is about cognitive wiring. When parents see their children becoming more confident and communicative, the policy proves its worth. It becomes a community demand rather than a government mandate.
it becomes a movement. I see it as a ripple effect. One child gets a quality education, they succeed in primary school, they stay in school longer, and eventually the whole community is lifted. Mr. Sarojun, if you had the power to change one specific regulation tomorrow, what would it be?
I would mandate universal, free access to at least 2 years of quality preschool for every single child, regardless of their location or status. No fees, no hidden costs, just an open door. If we did that, we would see our national GDP grow and our social issues shrink within a generation. It is the best investment any government can make.
That is a bold vision, and one I think many of our listeners would stand behind. It's about seeing these children not just as statistics, but as the future doctors, farmers, and leaders of our country. It makes me feel so much more hopeful knowing people like you are pushing for this every day.
We all have a role to play, Sochata, even the listeners. By demanding better standards for their local schools, they are participating in policy. It starts with the voice of the people saying, our children deserve more.
A perfect note to wrap up on. Our children do deserve more. Thank you, Mr. Sarojun, for sharing your expertise and your passion with us today. This conversation has been a real eye-opener for me, and I'm sure for our audience as well.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Keep up the great work with the show. These conversations are vital.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to episode 65 of Education Insights. Remember, policy isn't just for politicians. It's the blueprint for our children's lives. Join us next week as we explore the digital divide in classrooms. Until then, stay curious and keep learning.